So what we're doing today is Access Project 2, where we are looking at the strength, the power of Access in queries. Now let's think a little bit about what in the world is a query. I'm going to bring up a query. I'm going to go to search under Firefox here, and I'm going to go to google.com on Firefox and bring it over to the screen. And let's perform a query. Anytime you do a search, you are querying somebody's database, Google's database. They have a huge database of information, and they claim that they have 3 trillion results if I simply look for a cookie recipe. My query to the Google database is find me something that has cookie or recipe in the results. Did you know that if you put a plus in front of the word, that means that that word must appear in my results? And if I say it must have the word cookie, my results go down to, do they actually go up? To 4 billion. And if I say without the plus, actually the numbers, it's amazing. The numbers actually went down. I was expecting the numbers to go down as I started being more precise. Let's put plus in front of it, meaning the results need that, and let's put a quote around both words. That means I must find the phrase cookie recipe in my result, and I hit enter, and now the results have reduced a little bit because I am refining my query to the Google database. Let's say we do not want to have salt in our results. I could put minus in front of the word salt, and my results go down to only 4 million. Or another way I could do that is I could say I want to require, with a plus, the phrase salt-free. That is refining my query further, and my results should go down because there should be fewer results with the words salt-free in them. Let's add one more phrase. Let's add another phrase to our query to the Google database. Let's have it also must have gluten-free in the phrase somewhere. So I'm putting a plus in front of it, saying it must contain the phrase gluten-free. And now my results are down to 21,000. And I can say one more thing in the recipe. Let's just say it can't have the word nuts in it. I do not want nuts. So I put minus nuts. And my results go down, just a tiny bit, down to 7,000. So I am performing, anytime you do a search, you are telling the database engine of Google, find me this information, and I think it'll display the top 400 results. Now I have learned after doing a little research that they are actually not doing the full query. They are querying what they think the number of results will be if they want to find them for you. But even that's amazingly fast. Half a second to check in its database of how many results there probably are, that's why it puts the word about in front of it, for that query into their system. Now their database is huge, much more complicated than our database. But by doing this in Access, you're going to see that anyone that has a database, they can hire people to do this kind of thing. And by you doing it in Access, you'll learn some basics of databases. So when they talk about it and want to charge you lots of money to do it, or they want you to have some responsibility in entering data into the database, you'll have an idea of what's actually behind databases. So back to Access. Here's the thing that we're going to learn this time through this project 2 is we're going to be creating queries in our little Access database. And the queries we're going to be creating require a thing called design view. So you learn how to use basically what they call the design view in Access to create queries in our little veterinarian mini database. We're going to look for data Uh, in my query with Google, I only search for text. But we can have numeric data like somebody that owes me money, or someone that has, or the treatment that is most expensive. And because we want to be able to go back and uh, review the results, we can actually save that query. Over here in Google, we don't save the query, we just type it in. But I suppose I could copy paste my search criteria and save that in my research results as I'm doing research on a particular subject. I could keep track of what search criteria gave me those results that I was able to find that the amazing research on the internet. We can make our data a little more complicated. I would call this as a more complex query. I'm searching for multiple phrases. We call that a little more complex query, compound query. The results, right now, the results are sorted by whoever pays Google the most money to have their ads show up at the top. Otherwise, if they haven't paid Google money, I'm not sure how they decide what shows up first. But they have some way of categorizing the results that you get, because of course they know you'll look at the first few results first, and they're hoping that the most relevant result will show up first. We can decide how we're going to sort our results. Now we're keeping data in multiple tables that are related. We're going to see how we get data out of tables that come from multiple places. That's called a join, when you get data from multiple tables. And then once we have our queries, we can have a nice display of the results. We can send the data to another application by exporting the data, and we can do other fun things with queries. The main thing we're going to focus on is just getting familiar with how to create queries in Access. And so the way we're going to do this is to, oh, there, Lincoln is here. Way to go, Lincoln, you made it. You're online. I'm counting your attendance. So the way we're going to do this is going back to our previous Access project, and we're going to build on that. And let's check in the assignments here. Access project 2. Email me if you need a starting file with that, if you had any trouble with project 1. I'm going to start by going to Access, opening my project 1, because that has all the tables that I'm going to build my queries on. So I'm going to open project 1, AC1 project, and I'm going to do a file save as, because we're going to build on project 1, save that project, do a save as, save database as, and I click the save as button, and then I'm going to give it a new name. I'm going to call it, guess what, JSmart AC2, and I'm going to make sure I save it in the proper place as well, where I'm keeping all my files. So here is my project. I'm putting in my homework file. I'm going to save it as JSmart AC2. Okay, and now I do enable content again, and now I'm ready to create queries on the database that I just built. Okay, so while you're opening that, doing a save as, I'm going to provide that file here on the assignment. Let's see if I can find that. Okay, so now we have our AC2, and we can do this anytime we want to save the database as with a different name. We have our previous forms and reports in there, and we can leave them around because they're sometimes useful. What I'm going to do is, as we create queries, we're going to save them, and we'll show by the end of this project we're going to have lots of queries created. So let's get started with creating a query, which we have already done once, but we're going to do a few more. And let's just review here. In the book, they show us a reminder of what's in our various tables. Let's take a look at our owners table. Double click. Remember, we have two owners, and the relationship to other tables is not shown here. I have another table referring to my owners. So just looking at this table, this table doesn't have any dependencies. It's just a list of owners. I'm going to close that. Remember, it's always good to close things when you're done looking at them. If I look at patients, I see that patients refers to an owner in this column. And that's given me an idea of how the tables are related. I can close that. And I look at, let's look at the treatment cost table. It simply has treatment numbers with their treatments and animal type and the costs. I don't see a relationship here. Let's take a look at veterinarians. Similar to the owners table, I have a veterinarian by ID with the veterinarian information. Where it all comes together is in the appointments table. I see an appointment ID relates to a patient number, that's in the patients table. Appointment date and time. The treatment is only listed by its treatment ID. That's over in my treatment table. The veterinarian is referencing a veterinarian in the veterinarian table, and the owner is referencing an owner ID in the owner table. So the appointments table is what connects them all together, makes them meaningful in how they're related together. Basically, when I have an appointment, I'm tracking what the patient is, date and time, what the treatment is in the table, referencing the table, veterinarian in the veterinarian table, owner in the owner's table. Now that would be a very complex query. Let's start out with something simple. We're going to create a query that will list owners just for practice. So here's how we create a query using Design View. I go to Create on the Create tab, and I jump to Query Design. We're not going to use the wizard this time. We are going to be the wizard. Query Design, and this is a way to try to make building queries simple. Remember, you could learn the query language, but rather than you learning a query language, they give you a somewhat user-friendly interface. And this is what we call our design grid. And as we use it, you'll figure it out. The first time through, it's like, what in the world am I looking at? What good is all this? Let's use it little by little and see how it works. We're going to, first of all, we want to create a query based on the appointments table. I'm going to go ahead and close this because they don't show this in the textbook. I'm going to right-click and show table. And then this pops up. Then I'm going to click and drag or double-click the appointments table. And what this means is my query is going to get information from the appointments table. And now I can close the add tables. If a little window pops up, that's the same thing. Let's see if I do a show table. I can click and drag or double click a table to show in my query. So the appointments table is a table I want to show, and I can actually click on that table and I can enlarge it if I want to see all the fields that that table has. Now basically I'm saying I'm building a query and I want to get information from my query from the appointments table. So this is a very specific query getting information about appointments. And what do I want to see from my appointments table? I want to see the few items here. I want to see let's see, they're not showing me what they want to see yet. I want to see say I want to see what patient has an appointment. I'll click the patient ID, click the appointment date, or double click the appointment date, and double click appointment time. What this is doing is saying I want to view the appointments table, only these 3 columns from the appointments table. What patient by their ID and what date and time. Now, to view the data that I am querying, I click over here, Data Sheet View, or View, and now I see the 5 patients listed in my appointments table and the appointment date and time. No sorting or anything. There is my first query. I did a query from the appointments table listing ID, patient ID, date and time of an appointment. So this query is just a way of pulling information from that table that I only need those 3 columns of. Now this is kind of very simple because I could just as well have opened the appointments table and see this information there. So it's starting out very simply, a query. The only difference from looking at the table itself is I'm only looking at specific columns from that table. And now to save that particular query, I can just do a Control S, and it's asking me what should I call that query. Let's call that query, since we were on page AC2, let's call the query AC2 simple query. Every query I can give a name, and I'm giving it a name of the page in the textbook so I can always go back to what they were telling me when I was creating that query. Makes it a little bit useful to know in the book if I ever want to reference what were they demonstrating here. And now I can close the query, and anytime I want to see that data, double click on that. I get that selected information out of my appointments table. If I ever want to see the design of it, I can go to Design View and see how that query was designed. Show the appointments table, display patient ID, appointment date, appointment time down here in the field list. Design grid, multiple tables can be up here. Field list, a list of what fields to show, and we'll learn about what these other rows are about. So that's building a simple query, and we'll do something more complicated in a minute. Now before we do more, they would like us to add additional owners into our owners table. We have a few other owners we want to add to make our queries a little more interesting. So let's go and add them. I wish they would just have given us a table, and I guess it's not too complex. I'll help you add more owners. Right now, double click. I only have 2 owners. We're going to add more. I'm going to shrink away the navigator just so you have more room here. So we are adding a few more owners. O-3. Make sure that's a letter O, not a 0. O-3, and the owner's name is Liz O'Brien. 13 Griffiths Drive. And she is in Dunning, Colorado, 85665. Make up a number. Don't worry about the number not being exactly the number. And make up a mobile phone number for her. We're not using the phone numbers in any of our queries, so it doesn't matter what number you give them if you want to make up a number. And their email is, oh, they're not giving us emails the first time through. I hit enter, and I'm ready to add another owner. O-4, Samira Patel, and she lives at 76 Jenkins Way. in Westover, Utah. We will be querying people that live in Utah, so we want to get our states right. I don't think we're using our zip code later. And again, make up some numbers. Oops. That's fine. This is only going to make our queries a little more interesting. Three more to do. This is your data entry job. I think they're going to add a few pets too. And last owner. We're populating our table with a little bit of data to make it more interesting. Don't worry about spelling errors. We're not worrying about that. We're only learning about queries. Okay, so we have some new owners entered into our table only to populate our table with a little more interesting data. It's not going to affect our queries, except our queries will have more data showing because there's more data in our table. So we've added owners to the owners table. Since I don't think I've adjusted any columns, if I close this table, it doesn't ask me, oh, do you want to save changes? As soon as you enter data into a table, it is stored in that table. The database doesn't say, oh, do you want to save the information? It's already saving it as soon as I enter data. The only time it asks me, do I want to save, is if I make an adjustment to the column. Then when I go to close it, it'll say, oh, you made changes to the layout of the table. That's the only part it reminds you. Data added as records, as it gets immediately stored without it ever asking you, oh, do you want to do a save? If you ever make a change and want to do an undo, you can use the undo, but as soon as you close your table, it doesn't remember any more undos for that table. So if you're editing it and you mess up, you might be able to do an undo. Otherwise, you have to fix it yourself. That's why backups are important. So the owners table, we've added a few records. And let's see here, they would like us to make sure we have additional patients. Let's see if our patients listing is correct here. I'm going to open the patients table. Right now we only have 3 patients. We're going to add a few more. And we're changing the name. Pepper, let's see here, C1 pause is going to have a P-10 instead of C-1. They decided to change how they're identifying their patients, so change the name or patient ID to P-10 for pause. Ranger is now P-11. And Fluffy is now P-12. And now I have more patients to add. P-1 is a patient named Pepper. Type canine. Oh, mine. Oh, I never heard of this breed of dog. Weimaranner. Never heard of that breed. I'll expand that column so you can see that full word. And the owner is O-2. Owner 2 got a strange dog. And now we're going to P-2. New dog here is Hooper. Of type feline, canine. Terrier. And owned by O-6. Remember, we added owner O-6, so we do have an owner O-6. We could accidentally enter O-66 and our database wouldn't care, but that would be a problem because there does not exist an owner O-66. So we're going to figure out how to keep the database from letting us refer to non-existent owners, but that's something we'll be doing later. We're first just entering data for multiple patients. Oliver of feline. O-6. And again, if I spell the owner's ID wrong, that cat may not have an owner. So we have to be careful about that. P4 is Chloe. Feline. Mixed. Oh, sorry, calico. Belonging to O-1. We'll be getting to the queries in a bit, but we have to enter some data first. Practicing our data entry skills. Carefully identifying the proper owner. I think cat owners are more creative in their names. O-3. 3 more. O-8. And P-8 is Millie. Canine mixed. O-5 and P-9 Skippy feline mixed. O-1. Now let's see. We have owner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. O-7. Owner 7 does not have any patients. So it's like, why do we have an owner without a patient for owner 7? It may be perhaps we have a typo here, or their pet is removed from our database, or they've come in and haven't brought in their pet yet. Owner 7, if I look at my owners, I see there is an owner 7, but I don't see any patients that are owned by owner 7 yet. That's just something, as I view the data myself, I'm kind of seeing, does this look like proper data? And I'm checking that I didn't miss an owner 7. Nope, the book doesn't show an owner 7. They happen to be listed, sorted, because I've entered them in that way. I could sort them alphabetically by name or by owner if I like. That's something I'll do in my query. So I've added additional patients. And let's see if we want us to do any more here. So we've closed the patients table. They want us to add, let's check our veterinarians table. In the book they have 4 veterinarians. Let's see what we have. We have 2 veterinarians, so we need to add 2 more veterinarians. There's a B02. That's a 0, not a O. B02 is Calvin Bennett. Make up a number for him. And cell phone, we'll make up a cell phone number. And we'll give him an email of 436 Ridgedale, Swissdale. And they are in Blanding. Oh, I got the email mixed up. Let me select all that. Oops. Cut Control X and paste Control V. Fix his email address, cbennett@cengage.com. And this isn't critical information, but it might as well be consistent here. He's going to be living in Blanding, Utah as well. We have 2 people from Blanding, Utah, and 84511. One more veterinarian to add. R01 is Mia Ron Lee. Make up a phone number. Make up a mobile number. M. Ron Lee at cengage.com. And we'll put her at 111354 Hillary in Centerville, Colorado. So now I have a few more veterinarians to add, again, just to make our database a little more interesting. And then as I do queries, I'll have more interesting information to show. So I've added owners just by entering new data into my tables. Now they, in the book, say, you know, veterinarians, we would not only like to know what we'd like to know about veterinarians, we would like to know, let's see, they're going to view information from our query. So now I can close after adding the information about veterinarians, and then we can come back now to our appointments query. So I can close veterinarians, saving my changes. I adjusted my columns, yes. Close my patients table, saving the changes to adjusting the columns. And now I can view the query I built. Let's build that again, and we'll learn about building another query. So rather than opening that other one and modifying it, now let's go back and build a query again. So I'm going to go back to create. query design. The table that I want to view is the appointments table, so I'm going to double click on the appointments table. And again, you can right click show table and double click appointments. Close the add tables window. And now the fields that I would like to see in that query are the veterinarian. Double click. Let's see, let's stretch this out. There's the veterinarian. I want to see who the veterinarian ID is. Then I want to see the appointment date. Double click. Then the time. Then the patient ID. The treatment. And the owner. This says, show me these columns in the order that I have listed when I run this query. So I could put them in a completely different order than they show up in the regular appointments table like that. I could say, show me just this information. And when I click Datasheet View, I'll get that information in the order that I asked it to be listed. So right now, a query, the only thing different about a query is it just shows different information than what I already see in the appointments table. But it's going to get more interesting. But this is just showing you that in order to display the columns, I have to say show me stuff from the appointments table and show me these columns. And that's what I'm doing to build a query, is selecting specific information to show from a table. And basically we're just learning this whole design grid thing. When I double click here, it shows it adds that column to my list. And notice I can double click multiple times and it'll just say, okay, I'll show the appointment again. But that's not terribly useful. So I can say, wait a minute, I didn't want that. I can click on the gray at the very top and right click, cut, or hit the delete key. Click on the gray bar if I accidentally added something that I didn't want. And I get back just to list specific columns or fields to display when this query is run or viewed. Now, I have a query that just displays information, but it's really not useful until I start adding criteria. And let's see if they're asking us to save it. We're going to save the query when the book come into the page in the book where it says save the query. Okay, now, right now, this just displays all the information from my table for all the veterinarians, or basically all the information that's in that table. I'm specifying specific columns I want to have listed. Appointment date, time, patient ID, treatment, owner. Now the actual useful query part of it is right here in the criteria. This is where I say I am looking for a specific veterinarian, G01. Let's watch what happens when I put in the criteria G01. What I'm telling Access is only show me the information for that particular veterinarian, G01. If I look at the veterinarian's table, I see that G01 is Teresa. So there is a veterinarian that exists by that name. And in my appointments table, I do see, well, there is a veterinarian G01 appointment. Now, I could have come here and looked for G01, but here I'm saying, my query, could you just please show me only the information in the fields that I asked for, only for veterinarian G01. I click Datasheet View, and there I basically select just that row of information. This is what you're doing when you go to the internet and do a search. You're saying, Google, please show me from your database just the results that have specific criteria like chocolate chip cookie. Here I'm saying to the database, show me only the information about, with these fields, only where the veterinarian is G01, because that's the veterinarian that I'm on the phone with. I want to find out what appointments they have. They say, oh, what appointments do you have? Oh, you have an appointment on the 23rd at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. See you then. Or, sorry, we're canceling that appointment. That is what's happening when I run this specific query. Now, unlike the Google query, where you just say, give me information, it gives you random information. In this database, we say give me these specific fields when I find veterinarian G01. So this is a way to design a query on our specific database. We know exactly what fields we would like to see, and we know the exact criteria we're looking for. Now suppose I type something wrong here. I accidentally typed 00 or G001 and I hit datasheet view. I'm going to get empty results because there is no veterinarian with G001 in their name. So when you see no results, that doesn't mean you have a bad query. That means whatever criteria you had doesn't match what we have in the table. I fix my criteria to an existing veterinarian, and now I get the results for that veterinarian. So we've created a query. Now let's save it by doing Control S or the little save floppy disk up there. I like Control S better, less movement. And the query name I'm going to give this is AC2-8. AC2-8, because that's the page where they are describing this in the textbook. And I'm going to call it, what should I call it? It's, I'll just call it vets with criteria. Or I could say, how about I'll say vet G01. That's a better one. Looking for appointment information about that contains veterinarian G01. I click OK, and that query shows up over here in my list of queries. If I want to see the results, I can close this. If I want to see the results, I can come back and open it. When I first open it, it shows me the result of the query. If I want to see the design of it, I click on the triangle here, or I could right click here and take me right to design view of that query. Alright, so now we've got a first taste of this design grid, and don't worry, it's confusing at first. Little by little, as we use this, it'll become a little more understandable. Now we're going to build another query with practice here and learn about one more thing. So I'm going to close that query, and now let's build another one by going to Create, Query Design. The table that I want information from, I need to click here, Add Tables. This time it's the Owners table. Double click, and now I want information about my owners. Now I can close the Add Tables, and now, let's see if I turn that off. Let's see if I do right click, Show Table. Now I have lots of information I could select to display about owners. The specific information I want, I don't care about the ID. I only want to know their first name, double click, their last name, double click, their street address, their city, double click, and state, and postal code. Not interested in viewing their phone number right now. Just, I'm going to send them a mailing. And we'll run it before we add any criteria. This is a great way to do it. You display your fields first, see what you get for results. We can adjust our columns so we can see the information nicely. And I see I have all my owners listed because I had no criteria. Now let's go back to Design View and add a criteria just to practice this criteria thing. And let's say we're looking for a state that begins with the letter U. Well, I could type U, and what do I get? No results, because there is no state that is the letter U. But if I put, and notice it puts quotes around it for me, because this is a text field. If instead of U I put U star, it'll find any state whose first letter is U, and the second letter could be anything else. Well, I don't know if there's any other state Oh, it looks like I had a typo in that owner. There is no state UA, but it did find that state because U star means find the state with the letter U and then something may come after the U. So what you're learning here is the wild card. The star means in the criteria something could come after the U. And access puts the like word in front of it for us. That is what you're doing when you're searching online. This is more like your Google search is find me something that has that particular word in it, like cookie or chocolate. We're doing that in our database with the like quote U star. Now, what's nice about Access, it does some work for us. If I just typed U star and hit enter or tab, it puts the like around it for me. I don't have to remember that I have to put the word like there. I can just say, look for state U star. It puts it in quotes. I don't even have to type the quotes. It knows what I meant and replaces that for me. And now, there's the view of all my owners with a state begins with the letter U. And I think I can edit that and actually fix that state. Had the typo there. Let's hit enter, and let's now look at our owners table, and I see, oh, Tiffany didn't get her owner state corrected, so it'll let me edit the query, but it didn't actually make the change in the table itself. Let's go ahead and save that by doing a Control S. And we're going to save it AC2-10. AC2-10. We'll call it the wildcard query. Wildcard example. If I want to go fix that owner table, I can go back to the owners table. I can correct. Oh, look at that. It does show now that the UT got corrected, or the UA got corrected to a UT. So you can actually edit the query results, and you are actually editing the data in the table. Back here, I can go back to that query, AC10. I can see my wildcard example. Any state beginning with U. I'm displaying that owner information, but only for the particular owners from the state whose two letters begin with letter U. We'll stop there. We'll do more queries next time as we learn just some basics about how databases work. When you're using them out there, this is what Google is doing behind the scenes. And maybe one day, once your company has a database, you'll recall some of these details. Have a wonderful day.